Hello and welcome. We've all seen it happen, right? You see the news, world leaders are shaking hands, a big peace treaty gets signed, and for a minute you think, okay, great, that conflict is finally over. But then, fast forward a few months, maybe a couple of years, and the violence is back. It just makes you wonder, why do so many of these peace deals fall apart? Well, today, we're going to get into it.
It's such a frustrating cycle, isn't it? Peace can feel so fragile. Like we're just hitting the pause button on a war instead of actually, solving the thing that caused it in the first place. So what are we missing? What's the secret sauce for turning a temporary ceasefire into a peace that genuinely lasts?
You can almost think of the problem like a revolving door. A country manages to step out of a war, but then the door keeps spinning and pulls them right back in. To break that cycle, you have to understand a really critical point. The end of the fighting, that's not the end of the story. It's actually just the beginning.
Look, a signed piece of paper can stop the bullets, for sure, but it can't magically fix the reasons the bullets started flying. For any peace to have a real shot at lasting, you've got to tackle the deep underlying problems, the economic collapse, the social divisions, all of it. If you don't, you're just putting a bandage on a massive wound that is absolutely guaranteed to reopen.
The good news is there's a whole concept designed to do exactly that, to build a durable peace right from the ground up. It's called peace building, and it is completely different from the idea most of us are more familiar with, which is peacekeeping. Here's a good way to think about it. Peacekeeping, that's like the fire department. It's usually a military mission, it's short-term, and their goal is to rush in and put out the raging fire of a violent conflict. But okay, once the fire's out, what are you left with? Usually a smoldering ruin. And that's where peacebuilding comes in. It's the long-term, civilian-led effort to rebuild the entire city, not just as it was, but to make it stronger, more fire-resistant for the future. It's all about that social and economic repair. And if you look at the formal definition, there's a phrase in there that is just so important: to avoid a relapse into conflict. See, this isn't about just feeling peaceful for a day. It's about building the actual structures, the social, political, and economic systems that will prevent a country from sliding right back into war the next time things get tough.
So where did this whole idea come from? Well, it's actually not that old. The concept of peace building really started to take shape back in the 1990s, and it was a direct response to a totally new kind of conflict that was popping up: these incredibly messy internal civil wars. Traditional peacekeeping, which was designed for wars between two countries, just wasn't working. And it was the UN Secretary General at the time, Boutros Ghali, who really championed this new, more comprehensive way of thinking.
Okay, so what does peacebuilding actually look like on the ground? What are the core ingredients that go into this recipe for lasting peace? Well, some of them might actually surprise you. Now this is a radical and really powerful idea. Peacebuilding doesn't pretend that conflict is just going to magically vanish. I mean, come on, disagreements over resources, over power, over identity, that's just part of being human. The goal isn't to get rid of conflict. It's to build systems like fair courts or local governments that actually listen, or community mediation that let people work through those conflicts constructively without having to resort to violence. And who does all this work? Well, pretty much everybody. We have this image of peace being something negotiated by a few powerful people in suits. But real, durable peace has to be built by a huge cross-section of society. It's an economic project and a social project, just as much as it is a political one. And this is absolutely crucial to understand. Peacebuilding isn't just for after a war is over, it's a full cycle process. You can use it as a preventative measure to deal with tensions before they explode. You can use it during a crisis through things like mediation. And, of course, it's absolutely essential after a conflict to rebuild and to help people reconcile. So let's get concrete. What does a real post-conflict strategy look like on the ground? Well, a really practical framework boils down to a 6-point plan. This is really the nuts and bolts of it. First, you've got to jumpstart the economy to give people a real stake in keeping the peace. You have to repair roads and phone lines to literally reconnect a society that's been fractured. You've got to clear landmines so that farmers can actually use their fields again. But the human element here is just so vital. You have to give former soldiers and families who've been displaced a real path to a future. I mean, demobilizing an ex-fighter isn't just about taking away their gun, it's about giving them new job skills, a new purpose, so that going back to violence is no longer their best or their only option.
So when you start putting all these practical steps together, they all point toward a much, much deeper idea of what peace really is. It's so much more than just the absence of fighting.
I mean, this quote really says it all, doesn't it?
You can sign every treaty in the world, but if people are jobless, if they're hopeless, that peace is just not going to hold. Reconstruction and development, they aren't just some nice-to-have extras. They are the absolute foundation of a peace that can last.
And that, right there, is the ultimate takeaway. True peace isn't just an empty, eerie silence where a war used to be. No, it's a society that's filled with the sounds of progress. The sounds of kids going back to school, of new businesses opening up, of people debating their future in a town square instead of fighting over it on a battlefield. It is the presence of justice, of opportunity, and of security for everyone. And that leaves us with one last thought to chew on. These principles, they don't just apply to countries torn apart by war. Every single community deals with conflict. So it makes you think, what are the peace-building blocks, the investments in justice, in opportunity, in connection, that are most needed in our own communities? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me.